Chris Lezotte spent part of her past life writing car commercials for clients like Buick and GMC Truck. After she exited her advertising career, she pursued a master's in women's and gender studies at Eastern Michigan University, go Eagles, and was awarded a PhD in American Culture Studies from Bowling Green State University, go Falcons. Now she works as an independent scholar and focuses her research on the relationship between women and cars in a variety of contexts. This includes women's participation in car cultures traditionally associated with masculinity and the male driver. Chick cars, muscle cars, pickup trucks, Jeeps, and motorsports, as well as the representation of women in cars in popular culture, music, advertising, and film. Chris is a proud member of the MotorCities National Heritage Area, as well as the Leland chapter of the Society of Automotive Historians, and she serves on the National Society of Automotive Historians Board of Directors. It's my great pleasure to introduce Chris Lezotte.
Thank you, Bob, and good afternoon, and thank you all for attending this webinar and for your interest in my research on women in muscle cars. And thanks especially to Brian Yap and MotorCities for this research. Evolved through a number of projects and culminated in my book, Power Under Her Foot. In terms of this presentation, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the book, why I did it, and what I hope to accomplish by doing it, and then focus on one section through the voices of the female participants. I will be happy to answer any questions at the end of this presentation. You are welcome to submit those questions into the Q&A function at any time. To introduce myself again, I am Chris Lezotte, and I'm currently working as an independent scholar. I'm a Detroit native and spent a few years of my past life writing car commercials. That is a much younger me holding the clapperboard during an early 1980s car shoot. The focus of my research is the relationship between women and cars, a subject that has not received a great deal of attention in scholarship or popular culture. I began this line of study while a master's student in women's and gender studies at Eastern Michigan University, and continued to write about the female motorist at Bowling Green State University, where I received my PhD in American Culture Studies in 2015. Although I'm not what you would call a car nut, I believe my Motor City background and previous car advertising experience allows me to contribute to automotive scholarship from a new and rarely explored perspective. In my work, I've approached the women in car relationship in a number of ways. I've written about the representation of women in cars in popular culture, including popular music, advertising, online forums, and film. However, most of my research focuses on women's participation in various car cultures normally associated with men and the male and masculinity in the male driver. These include women who drive chick cars, classic cars, female pickup truck owners, women in motorsports, an upcoming project on women in Jeeps, and the project I'll be talking about today, women enthusiasts of American muscle cars. This particular Women in Muscle Car project began as a class assignment while I was a doctoral student at BGSU, developed into an article for an academic journal, was revisited as a chapter in my dissertation, and expanded into this book while on a one-year research fellowship. While the original study focused specifically on women with classic muscle cars, that is, cars produced between 1964 and 1973, the modern muscle car's growing popularity among the female population led me to broaden the project's scope to include 88 women with all generations of American muscle cars, the new cars, which I call retro, the old cars or classics, and the cars in between, which I refer to in this context as pony. So why did I devote so much time and research into the examination of women in muscle cars? Why did I feel this subject was important? There were two primary reasons. First of all, in advertising and popular culture, The most common representation of the woman driver is a soccer mom whose interest in the automobile is centered in practicality, reliability, and economy. While certainly the family vehicle has been a valuable tool in women's busy lives, the singular focus on the practical aspects of car ownership obliterates alternative ways of relating to the automobile. The growing presence of women as owners and drivers of other types of vehicles, sporty chick cars, pickup trucks, and muscle cars, for example, suggests there is more to the woman behind the wheel than popular representations would have us believe. The goal in all my research is to expand the woman driver category to include women who enjoy all types of vehicles and all kinds of driving experiences. Secondly, the American muscle car has a long-standing association with masculinity in the male driver. It was produced specifically for the young male market of the baby boomer generation. The qualities associated with the muscle car, power, performance, and rebelliousness, have often been used to describe the man who drives it. During the original muscle car era, women's participation was most often limited to that of passenger or cheerleader. However, as I noticed the growing number of female muscle car drivers at car shows and on the road, I endeavored to understand the circumstances that led to women's recent entry into what has traditionally existed as a very male-dominated pastime. And while there has been much written about the American muscle car, it has been written primarily from a male perspective. Since women's muscle car experience differs from that of men, I thought it was important to add women's stories to the existing automotive narrative. Therefore, in taking on this project, my objectives were to explore the unique relationship between women and the American muscle car, to understand why women drive these fast and powerful machines, to uncover the strategies women call upon to make a place for themselves in muscle car culture, to demonstrate how women's ownership of a non-traditional vehicle can alter our perceptions of the female motorist, and to acknowledge that the meanings women ascribe to the muscle car, while different from those of men, have value and are therefore worthy of examination. In Power Under Her Foot, I approach these objectives in 4 ways. I examine the qualities that draw women to a particular generation of muscle car. I look at the characteristics women with all generations of muscle cars share. I talk about the various meanings women ascribe to the muscle car, and I discuss how driving a muscle car disrupts common perceptions of the woman driver. Since that qualifies as way too much information for this presentation, I will speak briefly on the particular qualities found across women who own muscle cars of all generations, and how women call upon certain identities to gain acceptance and recognition within the masculine world of muscle cars. But before we talk about the women, we need to talk a little bit about the cars. In order to understand women's roles in muscle car culture, it is helpful to know about the muscle car's history and influence. While many of you in the audience are familiar with the American muscle car's storied trajectory, I will present a very brief history for those who may not be. The original American muscle car, produced between 1964 and 1973, was a rear-wheel drive, intermediate-sized car equipped with a muscular V8 engine and sold at an affordable price. What is generally recognized as the first muscle car, the 1964 Pontiac GTO, was developed by John DeLorean and his team at General Motors to accommodate the growing male teenage market hooked on illegal street drag racing. The success of the GTO inspired other automakers to follow suit, resulting in models such as the Dodge Charger, Chevrolet Chevelle, and the Plymouth Roadrunner. To meet the increasing demand for fast, noisy, and powerful vehicles, pony cars such as the Ford Mustang, Chevy Camaro, and Dodge Challenger were refitted with big engines to take advantage of the growing muscle car craze. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, thousands of young men of the baby boomer generation could be found on back roads and urban thoroughfares behind the wheels of noisy, powerful, and outrageous muscle cars. The American muscle car phenomenon came to an abrupt halt in 1973. The oil embargo, rising insurance costs, and new safety and emission restrictions are considered responsible for the muscle car's demise. While auto manufacturers continue to produce vehicles with muscle car monikers over the next 30 years, they were not the performance machines on which their reputation was based. Many of these pseudo muscle cars eventually died out. It wasn't until the early 21st century that Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge resurrected a few of the more popular pony car models into modern street performance vehicles. Advances in technology resulted in retro-style cars that were faster, more powerful, safer, more fuel efficient, as well as more expensive than their predecessors. As this brief history suggests, the physical characteristics of the muscle car, past and present, as well as the conditions under which it was originally manufactured and marketed, has led to its persistent and long-standing association with masculinity in the male driver. Women who own and drive muscle cars, therefore, must often develop unique strategies to become recognized as legitimate participants in American muscle car culture. The majority of women who contributed to this research are not rebels or revolutionaries. They are, for the most part, women with traditional values. Consequently, they are not interested in rocking the boat, but rather seek to integrate themselves into the culture in an acceptable yet effective manner. One of the ways they accomplish this is by assuming particular identities within the muscle car community. These roles are not specific to one group of muscle car owners. Rather, they are shared across all generations of cars and women. Whereas in the muscle car era, young women were most often relegated to the roles of passenger or spectator, women today have created their own roles and in the process have established themselves as important and invaluable members of the muscle car community. The first role I identify is that of caretaker. Women as caretaker is a role that is recognized and valued in American society. Identifying as caretaker allows women to position themselves as important to the muscle car community in three ways: as caretaker of family, caretakers of community, and caretakers of cars. The majority of women who contributed to this project participate in muscle car culture alongside husbands. The women noted that a shared interest in muscle cars strengthens their relationships and provides the opportunity to get to know their spouses better. While it could be said that men encourage their wives to join them in the muscle car hobby to rationalize their own automotive habit, the women view participation as a way to make their marriages stronger, more exciting, and more fun. Women also view involvement with muscle cars as a family activity. They encourage children's participation not only as a form of family bonding, but to encourage automotive interest in future generations. The women also promote themselves as caretakers of community. They take on leadership roles within muscle car organizations, organize events that benefit local charities, and arrange social gatherings that bring members of the community together. They often work tirelessly to organize, promote, and put on car shows that benefit causes such as breast cancer, as shown in this photograph, local women's shelters, special education, veterans, and juvenile diabetes. And lastly, the women take on the role as caretaker of cars. This is exemplified through historical caretaking, that is, using their own cars to promote the history of the muscle car, as well as the physical care of the automobile itself. One task that often falls to women is that of detailing, which is a fancy word for cleaning. Yet rather than disdain the job as women's work, the women take pride in their ability to get a car show ready. By assuming a caretaker role in multiple ways, these women contribute to muscle car culture in a manner consistent with traditional values while proving themselves invaluable to the culture itself. The second role I identify is one I call sentimentalist. The women who contributed to this project often have a sentimental relationship to the muscle car. Some of the women inherited cars upon the death of a beloved husband, father, or family member and continue to drive the car in that individual's memory. They hold onto these vehicles as a means to keep a loved one close by celebrating the individual's love of automobiles. I don't know if you can see on this photograph, but the license plate says, "In memory of my dad, I'll race you in heaven." This young woman grew up with interested in cars alongside her dad. He helped her build cars, and he passed away in the middle of this project. And so she has dedicated this car to her father's memory. Other women have a sentimental attachment to a car they have longed for since they were young. However, practical considerations and family obligations prevented them from acquiring the cars they desired. Now financially stable with kids grown, these women are finally able to purchase the car of their dreams. This woman grew up in Dearborn, across the street from two brothers that always had Mustangs. And she used to look longingly at those Mustangs, thinking, one day I am going to own one. And the time finally came right for her to purchase the car of what she called the car of her dreams. While the majority of women came into ownership of a muscle car in their later years, there were a few who purchased the car when young and kept it all of their lives. Some acquired used cars from family members, whereas others worked jobs after high school to purchase their first car. These vehicles hold sentimental value for the hard work they represent and the memories they carry with them. This is a woman I met at a car show in Minnesota. She is pictured up in the top with her car when she was 19, and then on the bottom with her car today. She came from a family of 10 children, so they had to share everything. When she got a job after high school, the first thing she did was buy this car. And then after she got married shortly afterwards. And she told me that the reason she held on to this car is it's the only thing that she ever had that was hers alone, that she worked for and paid for on her own. She had to share cars with things with her siblings, and then she shared things with her husband. So this is something that was just hers. Some women confessed they were either forbidden to own a muscle car while married or had to relinquish a car after a bitter divorce. The acquisition of a muscle car as newly single women not only served as a less than subtle means of revenge, but also allowed them to establish themselves as resilient, formidable, and control of their destinies. This is the hood of a red Mustang convertible. This woman, the logo is a super bitch logo. The woman was not allowed to have a Mustang while she was married. So the first thing she did when she got divorced was to buy this car. And this was sort of her message to her ex-husband. While the women appreciate the power and performance of the muscle car, it also often serves as a sentimental and significant connection to an individual or event from their personal history. This quote was from a woman whose husband and son purchased this 1970 Mustang. It was a barn find, I think in Tennessee, and they worked on it for a while, and then life got in the way. So once the kids were grown, she and her husband worked on it together, and she said it was just a wonderful time in their marriage. They had great conversations while they were working on the car. Well, unfortunately, while they were working on the car, her husband became ill, and he wound up in hospice, and friends from the Mustang Club completed the car for them, and they drove it to, so the last time he saw the car was from his hospice window while the car was pulled up in the parking lot. And before he passed away, he asked his wife to please take the car out and drive it in his memory, keep the car, drive it and keep it in his memory. A third role I identified was that of pioneer. Although the number of muscle car owners is increasing, they are still somewhat of an anomaly. Thus, many women feel a responsibility to serve as role models for other female muscle car enthusiasts in order to increase women's participation in what has historically existed as an exclusive male activity. Many of the women mentioned pioneers of women's racing as sources of inspiration. They appreciate women such as Danica Patrick, Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney, pictured here, and Ashley Force, not only for their considerable accomplishments in the male-dominated world of auto racing, but for the awareness their success has brought to all women who compete in motorsports and other car-related endeavors. The women identify with the female racers, not to imply that they possess similar accomplishments or skills, but rather, through their example, can encourage other women to join the muscle car community. In order to become accepted in the muscle car world, women must often prove they are worthy of inclusion. They accomplish this by convincing the male majority that not only are women knowledgeable about cars, but they have a lot to offer the muscle car community. Women who identify as pioneers take on roles that make them invaluable to car organizations. They serve as club officers, organize events, edit newsletters, manage websites, and act as forum administrators. Through their actions, they not only demonstrate their importance to the organization, but pave the way for other women to follow. This is a picture of the organizers of the Mustang Owners Club of Southeastern Michigan, and this was their Toys for Tots donation drive-through, which the women organized and manned, or I should say women. Women who have established themselves as invaluable members of the muscle car community consider themselves pioneers of change. Through their enthusiasm, automotive knowledge, and work within the muscle car community, these women have slowly but effectively legitimized women's inclusion into what has long existed as an exclusive male province. Women assume the role of pioneer to make the muscle car owning woman more visible, to change men's opinions of the female muscle car enthusiasts, to make muscle car culture more welcoming to women, and through their example, change the perception of the woman driver. Another role assumed by women in muscle car culture is that of storyteller. Perhaps the most popular activity that takes place wherever muscle car owners gather is the telling of car stories. Whether to discuss powertrains and performance, dispense information about parts and accessories, or reminisce about cars from one's youth, car stories bring folks together over a common interest in automobiles. Until recently, the storytellers in car culture have been predominantly male. However, the entry of women into the muscle car community has provided them with the opportunity to make their own unique contributions as storytellers. Because women's automotive experiences differ from those of men, their stories complement as well as add a new dimension to muscle car history. The stories of older women often revolve around learning about cars from their fathers or dating cool guys with hot cars. Young female drivers of modern day muscle are likely to share tales of car vacations, road trips, and various automotive adventures. This photo was taken at the Women of Michigan Mopar Muscle exhibit at Autorama a couple of years ago. And this woman is no doubt explaining to the spectators that this is her car, not her husband's. The women not only tell their own stories, but encourage others to do so as well. Because they have been left out of muscle car history, they understand the importance of uncovering the narratives of others. They view the collecting of car stories as a means to generate camaraderie, community building, automotive knowledge, and historical preservation. The women who also view the storytelling role as a way to garner interest in the muscle car in future generations. They call upon the role of storyteller to answer questions about their automobiles, foster car club participation in new fanciers, and encourage their own children and other young family members to become active in the muscle car hobby. The female storytellers who contributed to this project seek to strengthen the muscle car community and contribute to the automotive archives through the sharing, collection, and distribution of car stories. In the storyteller role, they have gained access to the muscle car culture and in the process are making important contributions to the historical and cultural legacy of the American muscle car. This quote should be familiar to anyone who shows their cars. The final role I have identified is one of the guys. While some of the female participants' involvement with cars came later in life, many indicated they had an interest since childhood. These women were often tutored as young girls alongside fathers. They grew up with a familiarity with how cars work and continued to be very involved with maintaining their own vehicles. The women in this category feel very comfortable around cars and often identify themselves as former tomboys, not girly, or one of the guys, to claim legitimacy as car enthusiasts. Recognition as one of the guys comes from three sources. The first is a display of mechanical ability. Some of the women received hands-on experience under the guidance of fathers and brothers. Those without car-savvy family members often enrolled in auto mechanics courses in order to learn how to repair their cars. Women also received help and instruction from male car club members. As mechanical ability is highly valued in the muscle car community, mastering automotive skills allows women to identify as one of the guys. Identification as one of the guys is often dependent on the possession of superior driving skills. Thus, being able to handle a powerful, unpredictable, and fast muscle car provides women with the credentials to enter the muscle car fraternity. Some women acquired these skills at the track, while others enrolled in advanced driving courses to improve driving competence. Many of the women were quick to mention they drove cars with manual transmissions, equating driving a stick to superior driving ability. The third way in which women gained credence in the muscle car community was through the accumulation and display of automotive knowledge, an understanding of automotive history, awareness of advances in automotive technology, familiarity with automotive terms and categories, and a basic grasp of the inner workings of automobiles awards women with respect within the muscle car community. Through the acquisition and display of mechanical ability, driving skill, and automotive knowledge, women are able to claim identity as one of the guys. Although the history of the American muscle car is a masculine one, the women who contributed to this project have added their voices to the narrative and in the process have altered the notion of what a muscle car is and what it can be. As the short presentation demonstrates, women with a passion for loud and powerful cars have developed unique strategies to enter the muscle car community and make a valuable place for themselves within it. The section talked about today represents only one of the many ways women establish themselves as legitimate muscle car owners. As I discovered when collecting these car stories, women love the American muscle car not only for its power and performance, but for the way it makes them feel while driving, for its ability to present a different side of their personalities, and for the experiences and relationships the car makes possible. That includes my presentation. Thank you all for attending, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you sharing that. First of all, why don't you tell us about the book and where people can get it?
Oh, the book is available, of course, on Amazon. It's available from the publisher, which is McFarland, or if you would like a signed copy, you can get them from me. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now, we do have some questions, and if you would like to ask a question, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Write down your question, and we will get to it. I have a question. I know that you own a few cool cars yourself.
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us about your personal muscle car? Or
well, I have in the photo, it's a 67 Ford Shelby GT350. It's a clone, so it's not a real one, but it's just as cool as a real one. I take it to car shows it's only driven in the summer. I take it to car shows in the summer. I also have a 1949 Ford, which was the car that saved Ford. It's been hot rodded a little, so it's it's fun to drive. I take that to Motor Muster a lot, but I keep the hood down so they don't see the changes that have been made under the hood. But and for my daily driver, I drive I have a 2015 VW Golf R, which is pretty fast and fun.
Okay. All right. Our first question that we received from one of our participants today is from Mary Seelhorst. And she says, hi, and thanks for doing this, Chris. Have you ever researched the history of women in design or in the executive ranks of automakers? Or does your work mostly revolve around the pop culture aspects?
My work revolves around sort of the ordinary woman who owns these kinds of cars. There's a wonderful book written by a fellow SAH member who interviewed the women who used to work for GM Design under Harvey Earl. And I think it's called Damsels in Design or Damsels of Design, which is really a wonderful book. And actually she had there was a seminar a couple of years ago where she actually interviewed one of the women that she interviewed was present. But as I said, my work revolves mostly around just ordinary women who own these cars. So I don't really focus on any specific famous women or women in the industry.
In your research, did you happen upon any statistics in terms of the percentages of women who own traditional or even more contemporary muscle cars?
Well, I know that more contemporary cars, I believe, for example, I believe in terms of Mustangs, which are one of the more, the modern day muscle cars, I believe 1/3 of Mustangs are purchased by women. So the new muscle cars are growing in popularity among women drivers. As the old cars, it's really hard to know because they're, I can just go by what I observe, and it's a small percentage.
And what prompted you to get into researching this topic? Was it something that started in your academic research and then it kind of grew beyond that, or what prompted you to get into this?
Well, when I was a master's student, I came to academia very late in life. I got my master's at the age of 60 and my PhD at the age of 66. So when I was working on my master's, I was looking for a niche that I could call my own, that would lead me to do more research. And I took a class called Gender, Technology, and Pop Culture. And one of the sections was on the automobile. And there was one article about women in cars written by Virginia Sharp, who's very well known in the field. And I mentioned to my professor, is this all there is? And she said, yes. She says, there's very little written on this. If you're interested in this, this is really something that you should pursue. So I did that. I wrote a paper for that class on women in chick cars. I sent it to a journal, an academic journal, and it was accepted and published without any revisions, which is like, that never happens. And so I knew I was onto something. So that sort of led me into this whole direction of women in cars.
Okay. We have a couple comments and a question from Pamela Hirschhorn. She says in our chat section, thank you so much. One of the most common questions I get is, how do you know so much about cars? So annoying. Have you noticed that about 1/3 by unofficial count of the people at tuner shows are women, and that many have built their own cars? The original Mustang was well received by women because of the mild to wild option list. No matter how equipped, it still looked like a Mustang. Even my little old lady. I'm an English teacher and I had a Mustang.
And in the original muscle car era during the 60s, the Mustang was, when they introduced the Mustang as a muscle car, there was the manual transmission and the stick, and everybody was buying the stick with the big engines. So they marketed the automatic transmissions with the smaller engines to women, as it was sort of thought of as the secretary's car. So, but women have loved Mustangs, have had a interest in Mustangs since they were introduced.
Okay, we have a couple comments from our board member at MotorCities, Margaret Hare. She says, "Hi, Chris, and it's good to see and hear you." She says that Eva McGuire, the Corvair lady, said hello this morning, but was not able to attend. Margaret says her first car was a 1968 Mustang. So do you think the Mustang was the favorite or the car of choice among the women muscle car owners?
I think in the 60s, it was the only car that was actively marketed towards women. The other cars were just marketed towards men. So I think it's always been an acceptable choice for women. And I think that's carried through. I think a lot of the women that I talk to who are, aging boomers have always loved Mustangs. And once they were retired and they had their kids were grown and they were more financially able, they went out and purchased one of the old Mustangs that reminded them of the Mustangs from their youth.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris. I'm waiting to see if there are any more questions coming in from those of us that are on the call. If we don't have any further, I will make note of the fact that next month, we will have MotorCities at Home number 14. We are working on confirming that, but look in April for our next edition of MotorCities at Home. And keep an eye on our website, motorcities.org, and click on the MotorCities at Home icon at the top navigation bar. Also, please note that we will be returning to our Lunch and Learn series, which will be coming in May. And that will be a session on our MotorCities grants, and the next cycle for applying for grants from MotorCities will get underway at the beginning of June. So our May Lunch and Learn series will be focused on how to be successful in your grant application for MotorCities. So definitely stay tuned for those, and they're coming soon. We have one more comment here from our board member, Don Nicholson, asked if Chris knows anything about Della Woods.
No, I do not. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate your time. And I think this has been a great way to commemorate March as Women's History Month. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. And again, note that her book is available via Amazon, and feel free to pick that up if you want to learn more. Thank you everyone for attending. Again, we'll be back next month with another edition of MotorCities at Home. So thanks for coming, and everyone have a wonderful Wednesday.